Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh, joined by Vic Matus, weekend editor of the Washington Free Beacon, one of my regular guests. Good morning, Vic. It was a grim, grim weekend because of the execution of 6 hostages in Israel, including the American-Israeli dual citizen Hirsch Goldberg Pollen. His mother had been a guest of mine about a month ago, and it just breaks my heart. I played a little bit of her. I just want the reaction of someone like you, who's the dad and who's been following the Israeli war against Iran on all of its 7 fronts, but especially in Hamas. What was your weekend impacted by how via that news?
As soon as I found out, Hugh, that that these hostages had been shot, and then learning about the nature of how they died, it was really a sickening feeling that I felt when that happened. And then uh, I understand there were a lot of people out there, obviously in Israel, protesting because they want the hostages returned. But at such a great price, Hugh, as you know, this happened before with the soldier Shalit, who was returned for over 1,000 Palestinian prisoners and terrorists, including Yahya Sinwar, who is the mastermind of October 7. Um, that cannot happen because it rewards them for doing this awful, awful act. And it encourages them to say, well, if we kill more, then we're really going to get them to bend. And then it becomes even more sickening when you hear the White House reaction to all this, which is, of course, that the onus seems to somehow be on Bibi Netanyahu and Israel, and that they really need to work harder to come to a deal. And of course, they've made multiple deals that have been turned down by Hamas. I mean, at some point in time, again, you just get so enraged because what are we projecting here? We're projecting weakness, and the only thing they understand is strength. But again, as a father, it was sickening. I sympathize with the parents, who want their kids back at any cost. I understand that, but we cannot give in to
I,
these terrorists.
I think the reason Netanyahu put forward maps of where Israel would not leave is because he agreed with Secretary Blinken to a proposal that
Yeah.
included Israel on that, and he did not want to be over. He didn't want to be sold out by the American. He does not trust America not to come back and say, well, they got to give more. And of course, America came back and said we got to do more. Do you think most Americans understand it that way? I just talked with Haviv about what the Israelis think, and that there's a large portion of the Israeli public that don't trust Netanyahu. Well, there's a large portion of the American public that doesn't trust Biden because he's not there, he's vacant, and Blinken because he always blames Netanyahu because he's the only person he can blame because Sinwar won't deal with anyone. I really think the Americans are getting hard here. By the way, I'm going to pivot to Kamala Harris next. I don't think they have any reason to doubt that she will be the most anti-Israel president ever. And so I'm just mystified by the demonstrations against Netanyahu after a terrorist kills 6 of your people.
Yeah, I'd also like to hope that the American public feels this way with a large heaping, dose of skepticism regarding the Biden-Harris foreign policy. As you mentioned, they've given terrible advice in the past. They didn't want Israel to go into Rafah. Obviously, that's where they are. And I believe that one of the conditions for peace was that they would not go after again Yahya Sinwar, as if they were going to give him some sort of immunity so he can replot again. The idea, I think, for most Americans, at least came across to me of, well, I guess we have, we condemn these terrible people for doing what they did, and also we need to negotiate. Israel needs to negotiate with those terrible people. I mean, I don't know why Anthony Blinken at this point doesn't go right over to deal with Hamas himself if he thinks that both sides need to be heard. It's depressing, but I really hope that people
I'm
hear that.
mystified, which brings us to American politics. I have to play for you first a clip of Vice President Harris in Detroit yesterday, cut number 17.
You better thank a union member for the 5-day work week. You better thank a union member for sick leave. You better thank a union member for paid leave. You better thank a union member for vacation time.
I have never heard Kamala Harris with that accent. I lived in California during her time as Attorney General and during her time as Senator. I moved back
Yes.
to Washington when she was. I've never heard that accent before. What is she doing, Vic?
Yes, yes, says the woman from Berkeley who grew up in Montreal. It's
Exactly.
she's channeling, she's trying to speak to her people there. That's what she's trying to do. I was reminded, Hugh, of the former governor Terry McAuliffe of Virginia when he was running, and suddenly he's on there and saying y'all this and y'all that, and the guy's from Syracuse. So these
Uh,
politicians, they do this, but it's really up to us. It's up to you and me. We got to spread the word, get those videos out there, let people see that. If you see that, you cannot in good conscience vote for this person after seeing something like that. It's just too much. I'm sorry, it's too much.
So I want you and I hope you and Mary Catherine Ham on um, Getting Hammered, the podcast that's on my must listen to list with very few others. I hope you talk in depth about where you think this race is going to end up. Because I'm going to give you my first solid prediction. I think Trump's going to win because I think Kamala Harris is an empty vessel. She lacks the minimum skill set necessary to be president. Most Americans see it. She got a bounce because Joe Biden is quite obviously incapacitated, but she is not up to this job. And I think she is going to become the slow, steady descent of Kamala Harris. The more that people see of her, the more they will conclude she cannot be president. Vic, do you agree with me or disagree with me?
I generally agree with you, Hugh, when I'm in an optimistic mood. And every now and then I look at those polls and the pessimist in me says it's not enough. The margin has to be much more significant for Trump, I think, in order for him to actually win. Because, I mean, I don't know if I have faith in the American people at this point to all agree on this. I mean, yes, we're now after Labor Day. So hopefully people do pay attention. People are going to pay a lot of attention, I think, to next Tuesday's debate. But again, if you want to go to the optimist in me, why I agree with you is assuming that the polls haven't super self-corrected here, and that the margin is going to be similar. As you know, they projected Biden with very large leads in a lot of the swing states that mattered, and in at the end, Trump was much closer to winning than the polls thought. And the other thing is, I do wonder how many people actually, when they're asked about this, don't want to actually admit they're voting for Trump, and they know that
That's
this
what
was a
I
virtue
think.
signal.
And I think people are saying they're voting for Kamala Harris who are never going to vote for her because they don't think she has the ability to do this. I mean, I can't imagine us
Yeah.
being governed by her for 4 years. And Vic, I'm going to close with this. Do you think she has the minimum skill set necessary to be president?
No, no, I don't. I'm sorry to say that because, I mean, look, I understand she's the attorney general but it's like this empty suit. I mean, you think about her origins and how she rose up through California politics. And then you think about the fact that she hasn't, she was picked by Joe Biden because Joe Biden felt that he needed a black woman to be his running mate at the time. And for some reason selected her, of all people. And then she hasn't received a single primary vote. So she sort of has skirted away through this coronation. She's getting a lot of help from the media, obviously. I mean, you have people like, Kristen Welker saying that she was at the dignified transfer of the soldiers killed in Afghanistan. And you have, Dana Bash saying that Trump, maybe he committed a federal crime by being at the Arlington cemetery. They're carrying a lot of heavy water for him, but at the end of the day, though, I think American people, I hope, would feel the way
Oh,
we do
I
and
think
say
the
that
Democrats
this is enough.
completely misplayed the Arlington Cemetery. They are unaware of the Streisand effect, which is do not call attention to that which you don't want people to know. And what we all now know is that Kamala Harris has never met with one of those 13 families, called them, or been at the dignified transfer of remains ceremony. 30 seconds, Vic. Do you agree with me? They ought never to have attacked Trump for standing with Gold Star families.
Oh yeah, that totally blew up in their face because the Gold Star families came to his defense. What are you going to do now? Attack the Gold Star families? They're saying they invited him. Fine, just leave it at that. They had a choice. They were invited. That's even the worst part. They were invited. They chose not to go. Joe Biden took a vacation. They'd rather not remind Americans that this happened on their watch.
Agree. Vic Matus from the Washington Free Beacon. Follow him at Victorina Matus on X. Follow him at the Free Beacon, the weekend editor. Thank you. And be sure to listen to Getting Hammered, one of my must-listen to podcasts. I'll be out